As we all know, sometimes things are big. On top of this, sometimes things are cold. And these two things combined is what we're dealing with today as we construct an ice giant camp map. Our camp was located deep inside an ice cave, so we begin by placing down some icy mountain walls. While we were surrounding the outside of the map with ice mountains to get across the icy aesthetic, I would also purposefully leave a little space at the front and the back of the map. These would work as the access points to the connected cave system, something I think was required because I envisioned this camp to be located less in a cave specifically, but rather in a large pocket of space within the cave system. So I wanted to visually express this. On top of placing the surrounding mountains, we'd also place some smaller mountains jutting their way into the center of the space. These would help divide up the area so the camp isn't just a large circle, which can make maps feel like a bit of a generic homogeneous blob. Rather, it should feel like there's individual sections which have their own vibes. Something we want for this map because it's going to be fairly simple, but having distinctive sections will make it feel more varied and lets us pack more narrative into its creation. We'd also lob down some cliffs on the map to achieve the same effect. When it came to the architectural design, we needed to figure out what was available to us in relation to what Stamps Incarnate had on offer. Is there going to be like any ice giant camp-esque things that we can place? I really don't think so. Ooh, these snowy Viking buildings could be interesting. A combination between maybe some like tents, maybe some like orc camp, and like these buildings could be interesting. I don't mind the idea of like these giants having like a little bit of a township set up in this mountain. Yeah, I was definitely thinking of it's like, oh, these ice giants, it's gonna be all camps, but you know what? Like, let's make it so they actually have some houses. I think they don't have to have a ton, so we can actually probably make these houses quite big. After placing these buildings, I needed to work on how to make the cave walls feel all-encompassing without overwhelming the space on the bottom half of the map. Okay, I think we maybe need to move this like wall down a bit. Is there some that are like less protruding? Like maybe like this? Yeah, that's kind of better. I think we need the wall to be like less intensive, as high. Like, it is good that it's high. I don't necessarily want it so high, I guess. Yeah, maybe like this. Oh, at this point, I'd start to weave some narrative into the mix, placing down some towers to indicate the giants need to protect themselves from monsters that occasionally skulk their way out of the caves and attack their camp. With this, it was on to making the icy floor. I find that placing just ice directly is often just too much. So we'd achieve the preferred look by placing a dirt floor base, then adding on top of that a low opacity ice flooring. Then we'd go through and add dirt paths on top of that. The aim here is to make it clear that there is a dirt ground on the bottom, but the icy nature of the caves encompasses everything, including the floor. However, the giant's constant walking around has melted away the ice in certain points, which is why there's just dirt paths. With much of the foundation for the camp complete, we needed to add some specific elements to make it feel more lived in and alive. To kick off, I would add a campfire surrounded by rocks as seats, which I'd then spread around the cave to show that the giants just picked up the rocks that were around and used them to sit on. A major feature for this map that I would add is blue and red crystals, items which play a significant part of the one-shot this map is being made for. Up next was nature. I think some plant life is sort of needed on this. I think we definitely need some plants, but what? I don't know. What would like make sense in this area? I mean, we could have some trees, honestly. You know, we could chuck some trees down. For all these elements, I also wanted to keep in mind, to a degree, that this is a giant camp and all the items should reflect that in their sizing. When we go to this then, it's like, what are the size of the crystals? It's like, oh, okay, well, they're kind of the size of some of these houses at times. These plants are the size of like, you know, they're not that big, but it's like, so when we go to, you know, whatever, this, I want these to be like comparatively very small. To really get across, it's like, yeah, this is like a giant's hut. But maybe it doesn't have to be a giant's hut as well. Like this could easily just be like a map in a cave. For a little more detail, we'd add some smaller rocks on the path, a small technique I like which gives it more definition, then a few lumber stacks as well. All of this was close to being complete, but I wanted to add a little something extra. I feel like there's a couple other things I want to put on the map. Let's just keep looking and seeing what options we have available. And let's just try to get a couple more little objects down. But these guys have a statue. I kind of like the idea of them having the statue of the wizard. Cool, I love this statue here. I think it's, you know, a nice touch. It's like they have been told this prophecy of these people coming back by this wizard who sort of like interacts with them at different times. And it's like, yeah, so they have a statue of them. There's a bunch of rocks around and they spend the time to get it done. Awesome. Yeah, love that as a little bit of a touch. Once again, let's just keep going through, seeing what else we can kind of flipsy-floozy onto the map. This was a nice way to work in some of the quest's narrative onto the map, something we'd expand on when we placed a bone pile of ice salamanders on the map, which are the enemies the party go against in their first combat encounter in this quest. I like the suggestion that's like they're eating maybe some of the salamanders that the party attacked were like had to deal with, so it's like a sort of indication. It's like these guys can deal with salamanders with no problem. It's like they eat them. Shows their intenseness. But yeah, having a little bone pile. Ooh. Very ice giant. Bone pile. So the fact that the ice giants are seen eating them and have a whole stack of their bones shows that these are going to be significantly tougher enemies than the ones they fought previously, which may guide their decision when it comes to either fighting them or working with them diplomatically, or, you know, sneaking like a bunch of sneaky sneakers. Building off this, I also wanted to make the exit a little more exciting than just an open path. I don't mind this being sort of open and they sort of walk into the cave, but this being a cave mouth, as like that's where the party need to go next, like deeper into the cave system, into a more dangerous sort of abyss-esque thing. I think is really nice. I think it's like a nice touch, you know, having it open was, you know, worked, was fine, looked nice and everything, but having this be a bit more open cavey, I think is good. And after a crispy 25 minutes, we were done with this map. Yeah, I think this is the end of our giant ice cave, and I think we did a good job of sort of like bringing in a lot of the narrative, you know. I really like the idea of having these be sort of buildings to show that these are like proper group, you know, they have some tents down here, but it's like, yeah, there's actual full infrastructure here. And I think that makes them the party much more likely to have a dialogue with them and the party to like want to try to like reason with them. And then, you know, we have these like small ice giant-esque things if it's like, you know, they have this little bone pile and, you know, they can be here narratively cooking ice frost salamanders over the open flame. Yeah, it's like they have a lot of boulders and rocks, and we tried to proportion, like the crystals are quite big, but it's like these buildings are absolutely massive. The buildings are bigger than trees. And if we go to like our like town map where the party are from, it's like, this is the town that they were living in, and their trees, which are maybe the same size, are much bigger. And you can see the crystals. It's like the crystals are much bigger. They're like the size of these buildings. And that's the video. If you want access to this map or any map I've made, you can purchase them individually or as part of bundles on my Etsy store. Or you can subscribe to the Patreon to get access to every map I've ever made. Subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Thanks for watching, and as always, I will see you in the next one. Bye!